evening, everybody. It's October 11th, Sunday night, and it is your usual stop on Sunday night. We are so glad you are here. Got a lot of fun things to talk about tonight. Thanks for joining us on the Ken and Glenn Show with a guy named Scott. And here they are after a heavy day of football and everything else on a Sunday. Please welcome Ken and Glenn.
Happy Sunday, brothers.
What was that?
What was what?
That I could have swore I heard our music playing.
You did. I would label it an absence of professionalism on my part. I think would be the.
Rap. I thought you were going into another rap, like the video we saw. I thought you were going to have a hat cap on sideways and break
yeah.
There. So.
That's
no,
funny.
man. In fact, I raced. You probably saw it, Ken, because you've got the control panel.
Yeah.
But I realized that the football game was on downstairs very loud, and that this Yeti mic picks up everything. And so I ran downstairs to turn it off and came running up back here.
Wow.
So I had just landed. Anyway, happy Sunday, dudes.
Happy
Sunday.
Sunday.
I forgot to share this, so I'm jumping on that real quick to make sure that everybody sees this.
Look at this. Donovan drove through Ohio yesterday, Ken.
Wow. I was wondering what that feeling was, Donovan.
You know, Donovan's been fairly mobile here recently.
He's very mobile. He was in Tulsa, I think it was, earlier this week, Donovan.
And he was in Dallas before Tulsa.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was even in Waco. And it begs the question, why?
Bragger.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he was going to see where the Branch Davidians were, or I'm not sure what's going on. Scott, tell us about the new backdrop tonight. I know you're in Palm Springs. What's going on there?
Yeah, I've mentioned on the show before my friend JJ Virgin, who is just an amazing person when it comes to health, fitness, and consulting with healthcare professionals and doctors and the like. And she and her husband are over here and invited us to come over and have dinner and do a good day of coaching tomorrow, and I'm doing that. She and her husband do not live here. They just happen to be here and say, God, wouldn't it be great if Scott Tammy could join us? So, and we've never met in person. We talked on the phone like you and I, Glenn. I mean, we talked on the phone, have been together a million times and have never crossed paths in person. And she's the one that did my diet where I've lost 35 pounds. So
that's so beautiful, man.
Jumped in the car and got over here because she's extraordinary.
Holy
From the top of 30 Rock.
Yeah, he just did a couple of live streams from up there too. He's there.
Now, is he really there, or is his green screen there?
No, he's really there.
Okay.
He is actually
because, you know, with this audience, you never know where anybody is.
Yeah. Well, he threw something off the top and we watched it. I'm kidding. No, he didn't.
He's doing stupid human tricks, right?
Yeah.
Yes, like Letterman used to throw stuff off buildings.
Excuse me.
Just for our fans' edification, 30 Rock is the best vantage point from Manhattan if you want to look at Manhattan. A lot of people say, well, what about the Empire State Building? I mean, it's so huge. The great thing about 30 Rock is then you get a view of the Empire State Building. Right in the foreground. It is a fantastic view. I think the two best views, since tonight's topic was best views of Manhattan, or it just became the topic. I'm not sure. Right. But the two best views that I know of are from atop 30 Rock, and then also from Jersey City on the other side of the Hudson. Looking when you look at Manhattan from across the Hudson, man, is that some sort of spectacular view.
Wow.
Anything else, you kind of get swallowed up in the buildings.
I've only been to Manhattan one time. I drove over to have a meeting with a virtual training company, and I'd flown into JFK, I'd flown into LaGuardia, and I had never been in Manhattan. So I drove over. I called you. I'm faced. This is a terrible story. I'm FaceTiming.
Wait a minute. This doesn't involve peeing in a cup, does it, Ken? Please tell me this does not involve peeing in a cup.
No, it's worse.
Okay.
It's
All
way
right.
worse. It's way worse. So I'm FaceTiming Jill, and one of my favorite movies I've talked about is Miracle on 34th Street, right? So I'm like, oh my God, I'm on 34th Street. And I'm FaceTiming Jill, and I'm flipping the camera around, holding the phone. I'm like, look, there's Macy's. Oh my God. She's like, yeah, I've been there like 1,000 times. And I'm like, well, I haven't. And it's freaking amazing. And all of a sudden I hear this whistle, really loud whistle. And I look up and I'm like, ah, and I slam on my brakes. I almost hit this police officer that was directing traffic. Moral of the story. Yeah, don't FaceTime when you're driving through Manhattan. Man, bad idea. It was bad. She did not look happy with me. I was like, oh my God, my first time in New York and I'm going to jail. This is great.
You know, in typical Ken Wall spirit, I thought you were going to add, and I was almost killed. Because isn't that your beef? Isn't that your running beef with humanity? Ken, is how many people add to their story how close to death they were, and you're like, dude, you weren't almost killed. You dropped an ice cream cone in the street, and the garbage truck drove by and splashed water on you. It was not a near-death experience. Relax.
Right. Oh my gosh, man. It was crazy. But yeah, don't FaceTime if you're driving through Manhattan. I'm just going to put that out there. So.
Well, just in general, you know, be careful when you're driving and be present. You'll live longer and you'll help somebody else live longer.
What's really cool is I left the meeting at 5:00 in the afternoon, and I had to stop in York, Pennsylvania on the way back. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this or not, but when you leave a meeting in Manhattan at 5:00, the traffic gets a little bit crazy,
a little bit wonky.
And when you don't know where you're going, like you're trying to
rush hour there too. What?
Do what?
It's a full service city, Scott.
Oh my gosh.
just a little bit of everything.
I think at 5:00 in the afternoon. Who's heard of that? Wow.
Dude, it was starting to get, it was like November or something. It was like starting to get, because they had the Christmas decorations up. I remember that, but it was starting to get dark already at 5:00. And so by the time, I don't know, I think it was like 6 hours later, I finally made it to an interstate. I'm kidding, but it took me a while. And I was like, oh my God, like this is insane traffic. Insane. I've never seen anything like it. It was crazy. Anyway, yeah, I won't do that again. Just saying.
Hey, random
in Manhattan, and that's kind of the
oh no.
I tell a signature story about that in speeches about it happened early in the afternoon. I was driving to LaGuardia to turn my rental car in. And this is back when you had the GPS that's, the setup, you didn't have it on your phone, but they had GPSs in like a Hertz car. And so it's set up on this thing. Yeah. And so this flatbed truck passes me and gets in front of me and then slams on the brakes, and traffic is moving great. And I rear-ended the guy. Well, come to find out, I won't tell the whole story, but come to find out, it's a scam that was going on in New York and some other major cities, I guess, but there where these guys would get out and look for rental cars, and they could see that big GPS in the thing from up high in the truck, and then create a rear end collision because they knew you were in a rental car, so you were insured, you were from out of town or whatever. And once they hit a hot That'll do it too.
And then almost died.
Yeah. So it was part of a scam of trying to create rear end collisions to scam the insurance company.
Wow.
But you know, for some reason, people from Manhattan on a hot summer day, when traffic backed up, when they went around the wreck, they did not express any concern over my status.
Mm.
Unless the middle finger means something different. I don't.
That was their way of letting you know you're number one in their view.
Yes.
That's right.
We care for you in the Big Apple. Yes.
Wow. Yeah,
So
the energy is incredible. But go ahead, Glenn. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say I want to send some random prayers out directly targeted to the ankle of Cowboy quarterback Dak Prescott, because Dak had one of those nasty Joe Theismann-like injuries during the game with the New York Giants today, which ultimately the Cowboys miraculously prevailed. Hats off to them for digging deep. Hats off to Andy Dalton for all of a sudden being the new Dallas Cowboy quarterback, and not to just step in for a couple of plays, but it's sort of like, welcome, you just went from number 2 to number 1. And I don't know how long he'll be in. They haven't made an announcement whether or not it was going to be season ending, but boy, the visual side of things sure painted that picture. And you could see that Dak was crying, really crying heavily as they pulled him off the field. And what you could be 100% certain of is that those tears had nothing to do with physical pain at all. He was crying because of the instant change. And, you know, just a thought on that. Isn't that life? Isn't it life that every one of us starts out our day with thoughts of what it might include, and so often it includes something unexpected? That's life. And so our job is to do, to the best of our God-given ability, is to skip through the landmines of life and to dodge the potential pitfalls. And you just never know. Oh, he's having ankle surgery tonight. Okay. Yeah. I mean, his foot was turned around sideways. And, you know, unfortunately, the cameras got a great shot of it, and they played it back, of course, in slow-mo so that we could all agonize over it together. But anyway, just healing to Dak Prescott. May it not be a career-ending injury, and may it experience swift healing to the extent that his body can handle. I wish him the very best.
You know, Glenn, and it also brings up not even a football-related question, but the contract negotiations were going on, and he turned down some pretty significant offers to try to get a better offer. Well, then he got franchised, which means he has no contract for next season.
And no protection.
So it makes you wonder, you know, I mean, not just as it relates to football, but do you take the bird in the hand, or do you, you know, in everything in business and life, you know, and by the way, on the other side, Alex Smith, who had one of the most horrific injuries, almost died on the field a couple years back, played today for the Washington football team.
Wow.
Which is
forgive me for not knowing. Was it a neck injury? What was it?
No, it was a leg injury, but it severed a vein or an artery. And
so he almost bled out?
And
on the field?
Yeah, by the time they got him taken care. Well, anyway, so then they get him to the hospital, and it gets infected, and he got sepsis. And so he couldn't walk for months. It was just, and not only to walk again, but to actually play again. Now they lost, and it was a fluke, really. They got in, but he played, and it showed his wife, but also just people in the stands crying because the announcers got choked up. You know, it really is amazing what they can do today with medical science. But even without football, it kind of makes you wonder: do you go with the sure thing? But you know, I mean, in hindsight, we can always say, "Oh, Dak should have signed that contract. He only probably left 10, 12 million on the table, but
right. But you know what's upsetting to me is that those who say, well, he should have done something. One snap ago,
yeah, exactly.
they weren't
you're
saying
right.
jack squat.
That's right.
Not one snap ago. They had no opinion about it, and all of a sudden we moved swiftly into what he should have done. Dr. Wayne Dyer had one of the most brilliant expressions regarding should have, could have, would have. Dr. Dyer said this. He said, and I quote, and it's intentionally bad English, but it paints quite a vivid picture. He says, we shouldn't have done something. I want to repeat that. You shouldn't have done something. And what he was trying to get people to understand is, but you did. That's all. Because it helps them quit playing the game of denial and move into acceptance and ownership. Well, you should have, but you did. Well, you shouldn't have, but I did. So the discussions should begin with what did take place, not what should have taken place or what shouldn't have taken place, because that's not what occurred. So if you want to speak the language of reality, we have to come from what was decided upon, what did happen as a result of that, and move forward. And it doesn't help somebody any more than, for example, this is my vivid takeoff on his comment, is imagine if someone doesn't wear a seatbelt on a particular outing and they get into a bad rear ender, they go flying through the windshield. The last thing the medical personnel should do is come up and inform the person who's laying there exsanguinating on the street. And the first thing they tell them is, you should have worn a seatbelt.
Right.
And that was his point, is what are you doing? That's not helping. The reality is they didn't wear a seatbelt. The reality is they did go through the windshield. The reality is they are bleeding severely. And the reality is we need to step it up and save this person's life. This is not the time for discussions about what you should or shouldn't have done. And I think that people notoriously just should all over their own lives.
Yeah.
And I think it is so debilitating to live in the worlds of should and shouldn'ts.
I think that people love to should on other people.
Yep.
Absolutely love it. I got to tell you guys something really exciting. Have you guys heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
I have. I don't know about
he's one
but
of,
I keep hearing this name.
He's one of the world's most brilliant neuroscientists. He does unbelievable work with neuroscience and quantum physics and all kinds of stuff. He's amazing. And I just got off the phone a little bit ago with Dr. Jeffrey Fannin, who traveled all over the world with Joe and is the main neuroscientist that Joe quotes all the time in the studies that they did together. And it's about, the human mind, how to literally change your mind, like literally change the bad stuff going on. And he's scheduled to be on my show. And I am just, this guy's brilliant. And I had to tell him I had to go. I hated it. I hated it. I had to
playing a little hard to get there, amigo.
No,
and Wall's place hard to get.
No, I had to get ready for the show, and I said, "Oh man, I hate to do this."
Put Mr. Buffett on hold. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Oh my God, Scott's doing it as well. Scott doesn't even know. Scott doesn't even know. That's what I did. The other night, I kept taking calls from Ken. On the show, I'd go, Ken, hang on just a minute. Apparently you're calling. Hold on. Yeah, buddy. Well, I would, except that we're already live. Yeah. No, I noticed that $3 word you used. Congratulations. Yeah. Okay. No, I'm proud of you. And yes, I love you as well. Okay. All right. Bye-bye. And I kept taking calls from Ken throughout this show.
That's good.
It was fun. So I've got a phrase we're going to adopt. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to throw this out there and see how you guys feel about it. Ready? Here's the new bumper sticker. We shouldn't should. That's it. We shouldn't should.
Yeah. And the direction I was going was not in terms of being critical of what you should have done from that snap. Where I was going is, risk reward and how much that comes into play in the decisions that we make in life. What risks are worth taking. I'm not being critical of that. What I'm saying is, he decided to take a risk on himself. Now, whether or not that was the right risk or not, I'm not trying to be critical of,
right.
not like the seatbelt example. But what I'm saying is, in life, that's part of what we evaluate as well. What risk are we willing to take because of the potential reward?
Payoff. Yes.
And how do we balance that out? And once you make that decision, then you got to own that decision. As I'm sure that he will. He just impresses me as that kind of person. I guess part of what bothers me are people that take the risk and then get upset because the reward wasn't there. Well, that's why they call it a risk.
Sure.
Right?
Could it be said, Scott, that the best time and I'm just feeling out what you're saying, could it be said that maybe the best time to own risk is in the windshield of your life and not in the rearview mirror?
Absolutely. And that's why the windshield's bigger.
Right. Absolutely. Which I've said in many of my talks, there's a reason the windshield is this big and the rearview mirror is this big. But once we take a risk, we need to simultaneously take ownership before we even get underway and understand it is a calculated risk. I understand that risk. I'm taking that risk. And all of that will keep me out of the woulda, coulda, shouldas come Monday morning.
Yeah. Exactly. If you don't own the risk, then you shouldn't be entitled to own the reward.
But I mean, it's really tough. I mean, this is actually a really good topic. I'm glad Scott came up with our topic for tonight. So the topic tonight, now that we're 22 minutes into the show, is how do you decide on which path you're going to take? Because it's right. It's the metaphorical fork in the road. For Dak, for anybody, it's like you're at this fork. You've got to decide. You got to go one way or the other. Which way is it going to be?
I have the first thought on that.
Door number one. Door number two. What was that show?
Let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal. Monty Hall and
Jace.
How about this one, Scott? And Jay Stewart
and the lovely Carol Merrill.
Carol Merrill, you bet.
Wow. You guys are so smart. So you are, or filled with a lot of useless knowledge.
Useless information.
That's probably a more aptly put statement.
I'm just kidding. So how do you decide which path you're going to take? How do you decide?
I have the first thought on it.
Yeah, go ahead.
May I?
You got.
And it's not the thought. It's just it is a truth, which may help all of you with your decision making, which is that indecision is itself a decision. And the problem with indecision is that when you fail to make a decision, you're now setting yourself up to be at risk for it going someone else's way and not your own. So we either decide our future or our future will be decided for us. And I think that I certainly commit my life to having a much stronger role in say so. And I want to be a more active participant in the trajectory of my own fate than to sit around and not decide, at which point my fate will invariably be determined for me. So that to me is incentive that says, get off your duff and make a decision here. It's important.
Okay. Scott, how about you? What do you think? Because we're all faced with these ginormous decisions, and sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes not. But how do you decide which way you're going to go?
Boy, that's a great question. Sometimes it's just your gut or your heart or the spirit or the voice, or the, Glenn calls them the whispers. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I do, gosh, it sounds so old, but it's the what they used to call the Ben Franklin close, but I think it's a good thing about personal decision making.
Yeah.
Is that there's very few things it's 100 to 0. I mean, if it was 100 to 0, you wouldn't have to think about it.
Right.
It's thinking about, okay, if this works, what are the rewards? If it doesn't work, what is this? And also, how much do I have to invest? I mean, not just in money, but in your time and in your energy and in your commitment. I mean, those are all things I think that have to be considered. I mean, there are certain things. When I was in high school, I mentioned before, my dad was a musician, played on the weekends and had a band and everything. And I was playing drums, and there was a country music singer, the guy named Jim Ed Brown. He's in the Country Music Hall of Fame. We were their opening act. Well, he came up to me between the two shows and put his arm around the shoulder and said, I need a new drummer, and I want to offer you to be the drummer. And, to get offered to go on the road with a, big deal in country music at that particular time. And I realized just in my gut, there was a difference between playing drums and being a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to play drums, but it just didn't feel right to be a drummer. And I think a lot of times we push that voice down, that voice that, oh, but wouldn't it be exciting to do this? And wouldn't it be, yeah, it would have been exciting and it would have been fun and it would have been, but would it taken me where, and I just knew the answer was no. So I don't know. It's a tough line, isn't it? Between, what you feel and what you know. And yep, that's my dad, Scott remembers. So, Ben Franklin close, CLOSE. Yes.
Can you shed light on what the Ben Franklin close is?
Yes, I should have done that. Thanks, Glenn. You take a sheet of paper and you fold it in half, and you put a plus on one, and then you flip it over, put a minus on the other, and then you ask yourself just to focus on what's all the positives about this, or if everything went right, where would this end up? And you make all the positives. Then you flip it over and you list all the negatives, and then you open it up, and then you'll have side by side, after you've opened up the folded paper, you have side by side the pros and the cons. And sometimes you don't even realize it, but your cons list of reasons why you shouldn't are so long that they overwhelm the pros, and it gives you a logical approach to it. Sometimes what happens is you write all of it down, open it up, but your heart, the whisper, your gut just says, this other thing is what I need to do. So regardless of how many you have on that sheet, you follow it anyway. So, but it really is it's more of a thought process than, oh, I have 18 on one side and 12 on the other kind of thing. It's important to work through. I posted on Facebook there. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was this sign in front of this store, and it said, "Life is like a game of chess." Unfortunately, I don't know how to play chess.
Right.
Right.
I do think like that, don't you? That we have to think a couple of moves ahead. If this happens, then what happens?
I think you're in trouble if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. But I see a lot of people that don't.
Yeah.
I was listening respectfully, and then also writing down a couple of thoughts that were tributaries of what you mentioned. And one is the old adage, and it seems that I apparently use the Ben Franklin close without knowing it. That's why I was going to ask you, and then somebody beat me to it. I was going to ask you because I was unfamiliar with that expression, but I do that. And what I had written down before you mentioned it is that I go right to level 4 of decision making. What is the likely consequence? So if I'm looking at two choices, I look at what is most likely going to occur, both things going best case scenario and both things going worst case scenario, and leaning heavily toward best case because I want to lean toward positivity. I don't live my life from a place of dread or dreadful expectation. If I did, I would never have moved to California and gone into show business. That is a fact. So I expect things to go well. And I also affirm, you both heard me use my phrase, things go well for me. And that's not an arrogant statement. That is a view that I have held since I was a little boy, because I've noticed that holding that opinion about life is in my best interest, and that it works, and that it does have vibrational power. This is not woo-woo, foo-foo, new age thought stuff. It's just really true that by holding the opinion that things work out for me, I suppose at a molecular level, it stirs up goodness and keeps things moving forward in a favorable way. Does that mean that I have an exemption card from bad things happening? No, it does not. But what I've noticed is it seems to saddle me up with an understanding where I pick up the presence of things that are not going to be congruent with the intended outcome. I will pick something up about that, whether it's a relationship that I've learned to steer clear of because I feel something and nothing more. I feel it. Something is saying, do not do business with this person. Do not get into a close relationship with this person. Do not join this talent agency. Do not say yes to this movie based on something that was revealed early on. How we do anything is how we do everything. There's another phrase, and Scott, what you were saying, I don't know why it brought this up, but you were talking about in this Ben Franklin close, and I love that this is all spontaneous. We didn't know we were going to talk about this tonight, but in that version of one list is considerably longer, whether you're listing the positives or the negatives, the pros, the cons, and you do it based on length of list, I would say, and I'm just throwing in my 2 cents, that it would probably behoove us if we didn't base our decision necessarily on the length of the list and the length of the list alone. And here's why. There's a saying in gambling, and you live in Las Vegas, so maybe you've heard this saying, maybe you haven't, but man, is it ever genius. Someone could say, well, what is your record the last 10 times you've played blackjack? You're going to like this. I think Ken's going to like it too, but I know you will, being in Vegas, Scott. What is your record the last 10 times you've played? You could say, well, I'm 9-1. And you say, well, then great, man. Hell, you should play every day if you're 9-1. But on a deeper dive, here is what we learn about the victories versus the losses. What we learned is that the wins were relatively inconsequential. They were a few $100s here and there. However, that one loss was massive.
Yeah.
So the saying in gambling is this: yeah, they may be 10-1, but what I've noticed is they eat like a bird and poop like an elephant.
Right.
That is a great thing to live by, is when we're making decisions, we want to make sure that we're not making decisions that reflect that scenario where now, having made this, I'm going to be eating like a bird, but I'm going to poop like an elephant, which means you're going to have your reward. You're going to get your food. You're going to be fed. But the cost of poopage on that eating is very, very risky. And all of a sudden, the 9 wins in a row, they don't mean as much as the numeral would suggest, because you're not looking at the entire tote board. So I would encourage people to look deeper at the outcome and don't be misled by early projections. Go into a deeper dive and get more information. More information is always going to be helpful.
I have a different.
Did Scott freeze?
Spin. Yeah, he did. He's back. I have another spin on this.
Please.
Dak Prescott. How long has he played for the Cowboys?
He's been with us for a few years. He took over. He filled Tony Romo's shoes when Romo got injured.
So 10 years ago, so if he's been there a few years, let's say 10 years ago, how many times had you heard Dak Prescott's name 10 years ago?
Yeah, not at all.
Never. So, here's my thought on
he would have been 17 years old 10 years ago. He would have been in high school.
Yeah. You might have heard about his state championship or something, but I think that there's what is the poem about? And I have it. It's behind my green screen. No, the one about the man who that's marred in blood, gets in the ring.
in the
It was
arena?
Teddy Roosevelt. That
Do you know the poem, Scott?
I
It's
nah,
long.
not enough to read.
If it's presidential in theme, I
Yeah,
acquiesce.
Roosevelt did not write it, but it was his favorite poem. It was the man
right.
in the arena, and then Nixon frequently quoted it as well.
Yeah. And I think that what happens is people do not trust their risk-taking decision abilities, and so they stay frozen in fear for a lifetime. And here's the thing. I made a decision a few years ago that
Charles Coachman says it's the critic.
And the critic. Yes, thank you, Charles. And right, Brian Hess said 10 years ago I hadn't heard the name Ken Walls, probably hadn't heard of Scott, or maybe you had, maybe if you're running in Scott circles, and well, you probably heard of Glenn. but anyway, so my point though is that people get stuck in the fear. There, you have it. Would you read it?
Yeah, if you want. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, and who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, it fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.
Man, they need bigger headstones, because I want that on my headstone.
I have it. It's one of my favorite quotes, and Jill had it printed and framed for me. It's behind the green screen, but it's people get. I've made some horribly bad risk-taking decisions in my life, even after I got sober.
Were they bad based on the outcome, or were they bad going in?
No, that's what I want to talk about. They were bad based on
projection,
my projected outcome.
Yeah.
Not the this one particular decision I made, I would have never met Scott McCain. I would not be able to call Scott McCain a friend, although it didn't work out.
The bad outcome.
No. No, I'm just saying, like, we all are faced with these potential decisions that we need to make in life, and sometimes it has to, I think a lot of people go, well, Dak Prescott, my God, he just lost millions of dollars. Well, how much money do you need to take to your grave? Because he's going to the grave someday soon, or someday in the future as well. Hopefully not soon, but someday in the future, he's going to die. We're all going to die. How much money do you need in your coffin? So, when you're not taking risks because you're paralyzed in fear, you're not living, in my opinion. That's just my humble opinion. And apparently, who wrote that? Who is the author of that?
Brian Hess just posted it here. It's so weird. It's talking about Teddy Roosevelt, but
yeah, it is. That's what the name is. I was going to have to scratch that out on my framed thing.
Maybe it is to quote, one of Roosevelt's greatest rhetorical triumphs, citizenship in a republic.
Huh. I think again, this is just me. I cannot stand being paralyzed in fear. And when it comes to making a decision to take a chance, I almost always just trust my gut and know that no matter what, whether it works out or not, no matter what, there will be something beneficial for me as a result in the long term. So I know that the who is it that owns the Dallas Cowboys? Jerry Jones, is that
Jerry
right?
Jones. Yeah.
So he's known to be a guy that takes care of his people. I I don't know him personally, but I would imagine that maybe Dak will be okay. And Dak has a name that he didn't have had he not, well, I mean, I don't know. I guess he took a different chance, but I think you guys get my point, don't you? Am I making sense?
You are.
Absolutely.
And now we have dead air.
We were just, I think, following up with a moment of respectful silence.
I think fear leads to people living indefinitely in an average place or worse. Amen.
I'll chime in because I've never been reluctant to do so, but I think that people need to think. I don't think people think about death enough. I don't. And I think that our lives become vastly improved. And I'm not talking about fearing the inevitable. I'm saying really, really spend some time thinking about hey, I'm just passing through nature of life. Because to me, here's a parallel, and I've never said this, but I sure live my life in a way that reflects it, that I think if you live your life without considering death, it's a lot like playing a football game without ever looking at the clock. And I don't think you play great football unless you're clock conscious. I think every coach is clock conscious. We have to play the clock well in order to increase the likelihood that we win the game. I mean, so you think about how many decisions in a football game are clock based. And it's really smart, when to just sit on the football, when to get out of bounds. You've got timeouts that you want to preserve, and they're precious. And I think in that sense, oh my God, is football. And have you guys seen Andy Griffith's take on and there was football?
What it was football.
What it was football. Oh my gosh. Now, of course, that's not a metaphysical or religious take, but it's certainly highly entertaining. So I think it's probably a good idea to begin with that one, just to loosen you the hell up and laugh a little bit, but then understand that there's something to be said for being aware that every one of us is on the clock, which is not said. I want to really emphasize this from the standpoint of panic, but rather from the standpoint of truth, because it adds, in my view, an appropriate level of urgency. There's something that puts pep in our step when we know we're on the clock. Every team I've ever seen plays with greater intensity the 2-minute drill. So why not introduce the 2-minute drill to our lives? Because they play like badasses when there are 2 minutes left. So I'm just a fan. I'm a fan of being aware that I'm on the clock. And you know what else? I want to take it one step further. I'm a fan of being aware that others are on the clock, because when I realize that not only am I on the clock, but so are you, no matter who you are, and I'm interacting with you, there are two advantages to this attitude. One is that I remember in that moment that we are all in this dance together, which breeds unity, which is healthy and which is beautiful. The other thing is it breeds patience and compassion, because I look at my brothers and sisters of this earth and realize that they too are works in progress and they are passing through. And I have a chance to observe their dance and watch the miraculousness of what is standing before me, knowing that in the form that it's in, it's temporary. And its temporariness is what's beautiful about it, is just to realize that I'm watching this beautiful thing blossom and have its beingness, but it's just moving through. Helen Reddy passed away last week, and I've been watching videos for the last month of Helen and of Mac Davis and now who I'm trying to remember who else passed away last week.
Eddie Van Halen.
Yes, Eddie Van Halen passed away. And looking at these videos, that what they all have in common is that once upon a time, they too were young. And the clock ticked, as it does. I just think it's so interesting if we look at one another and go, you're an amazing work in progress, and like me, you are just passing through. So I think it's time for me to extend compassion that you're not the finished deal. You are a work in progress, and I'm going to lend a helping hand to your task of evolution. I'm here to try to make your evolutionary path just a wee bit better and a wee bit easier. I don't want it to be said about me that I'm someone who made your life more difficult. Shame on my butt. If that's the role I ever play in another human being's life, it's a very big deal to me, guys. It just is. I'm not here to get in people's way. I'm here to help shoehorn their pathway to their biggest dreams. And I think about it every day. This is not just something I'm saying on the show tonight. Every day of my life, I think in terms of being that shoehorn of positivity that can help facilitate a favorable outcome. I'm not here to go to war, not here to be in a fight, not here to try to be right, but just here to help. And being on the clock keeps me in that place.
Love that. I love it.
See, I got the same moment of silence you did.
Serena says, I was trying to give Scott, I was leaving the door open for Scott to walk through, but Serena says, what's that?
No, I was just going to say the only yes, and I would add that the difference is in a football game, everybody knows how much time is left.
That's true.
You know, I lost my wife at 50, and we didn't, couldn't have imagined that. So that's one of the things we also have to be cognizant
of. That is
a
distinct difference. Yes,
the clock is winding down, but none of us know how much time is left in the game,
which only increases the urgency.
Exactly. Exactly. I was going to say increases the urgency for all of us, because we don't know how much time's left on the clock.
Hence why you got in the car and drove 4 or 5 hours to be in Palm Springs. There's no guarantee. You don't have a guaranteed payoff for anything, right? There's no guarantees, but that's one of the things I love about entrepreneurs is they're not typically super risk adverse, and that's my kind of people. And the people that are risk adverse, I realize that it's literally their programming. It's some sort of a program that, because I've run the program, like I get it, but that's why I love saying like nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? No risk, no reward. But like, because there is risk. I mean, if you're going to have a big payoff, you're probably going to have to take a big risk.
I've mentioned it before, but there was a great classic speaker from the 70s named Dr. Charles Jarvis from San Marcos, Texas. And he would get up and his speeches, he would say, I got $1,000 in my wallet for anybody who can produce a card that guarantees you're going to live long enough to walk out the door and my speech is over. He said, you ain't got that card. He said, I ain't got the 1,000 either, but I wasn't worried.
That's funny.
Well, you at least got a laugh out of us, Scott. We still owe you a dead air silence. Right now, Ken and I are batting 1,000, so we still need one of those moments for you. I love that line. Oh my God, I don't have the 1,000 either. That's funny, man.
Oh man, but yeah, again. I mean, if we. We played the video. Remember a week ago the guy Ed Foreman that talked about, one of the things is, people say, boy, when we just get out of high school, we'll be happy. Oh, when we just get married, then we're going to be happy. Oh, when we have kids, then we're going to be happy. When we get the kids in school, then we're going to be happy. When the kids get out of school, then we're going to be happy. When we just get the kids through college, then we're going to be happy. When I retire, then I'm going to be happy. And you retire and then look back and realize I was waiting on something external that was going to make me happy.
Right.
And now I don't know how.
Yeah.
That's tragic.
This is my dear brother, Kerry Graves, who said he
Wow.
thought his wife when she was 58. And that was just 2 years ago that she passed. And they had spent 36 years together. But Kerry has found, thank you, dear God, he has found new life in our program. He's found an extended family, a heartfelt family. And he has continued to move forward. My dear friend Jim Beaver wrote a book called Life's That Way. And a lot of people misunderstood him and thought he was saying, life's that way. And he said, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant is life's that way. And, and Jim lost his wife of 15 years, my dear precious friend who I reference most days of my life, Cecily Adams, who died at 46. And this was Don Adams' daughter, Don Adams from Get Smart. Don's daughter and I were dear friends, and I was invited to eulogize her. And it was really wild because there were 6 of us who were asked to speak at this massive gathering. And the speaker that I led, that I preceded, was Don himself.
Oh, wow.
And Don was the last speaker. And that's his eulogizing his own daughter occurred right before he himself died. He was very, very sick at the time. And, just extraordinary.
Wow.
So what is the conclusion, gentlemen? I would say the conclusion, and it's certainly not original, is to once again be reminded of the preciousness of life, the fleeting nature of life, and neither one of those things are off or incorrect or misaligned. They just are. They just are. That truth comes in as neutrality, and to remind us to take nothing for granted and do the best you can to stay out of assumptions. Largely, not always. I think there are some perfectly natural assumptions. I think you assumed you would get to Palm Springs today, didn't you?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Right. Or you, but probably, am I right? You probably wouldn't have gone.
That's a great, it's a great distinction that you assume you're going to get there, but you shouldn't take it for granted.
Right. You don't take it for granted, but you assume, or you wouldn't have headed out the door.
Yeah.
You assumed the car you got in, you assumed it worked. You assumed that the gas gauge was reading accurately. You assumed that California wouldn't fall off into the ocean today. And you would, after spending 4 hours or so on the road, you would wind up in Palm Springs. And you know what happened, Scott? You wound up in Palm Springs.
Yeah. Yes, you're exactly right. Yes, there's another great Charlie Jarvis quote.
That's
Go ahead and read that one out, would you?
One thing about friends, when you die, you want to make sure you got at least 6 of them.
Oh my God! I've never seen a humorous pallbearer quote until that moment.
He had so many. By the way, one thing that you reminded me of, Glenn, and this is off the subject, but when you mentioned about Don Adams speaking at his daughter's funeral, one of the things I tell friends of mine is, in some ways, it's not traditional to do so, but I would encourage everyone to speak at the funeral of a loved one. Don't leave it up to someone else. My late wife, one of the great things she said, and by the way, you're going to speak at the funeral. And I went, yeah, people don't do that. The minister or whoever's conducting the service and other people, but the husband doesn't get up and talk. And she said, you're not going to spend your life taking money from strangers to get up and speak and not get up and talk about me, which I thought was great. And I did. And now I wouldn't take $1 million for that speech. Just the chance to express that was so cathartic, but also now I look back and hardest thing I've ever done, but so glad I did.
May I ask you, have you spoken at several funerals?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing about speakers. We speak at funerals.
Yeah.
We're the first people they ask.
Yeah, exactly right.
When somebody dies, nobody goes, you know what? I'm thinking we should call a plumber and see if they're available. I mean, they're going to call a speaker. They're going to call an actor. So
Who barely got their GED? Let's see. Let's have that.
I'm with you on that. I think that it is something, and can we travel that tributary for just a moment?
Sure.
I have an opinion about it, which is that for emotional health. Okay, so this is Glenn's tip for emotional health. For emotional health, quit resisting what's natural. Here's what's natural. Tears are natural. A choked up sensation in your throat is natural. You've lost someone. It's okay to cry. It doesn't mean anything is wrong. It doesn't mean that you're flawed, and it damn sure doesn't mean that you're weak. It means you're human. God bless you. God bless your humanity. So I wish more people, frankly, would get up at the podium and let what happens happen, whatever it is. If you speak effortlessly through it because that's what's organically your truth, then you do that. If you lose your thing, then you lose your thing. And it's okay. In fact, it's beautiful for one reason, because it's friggin' honest. I don't know what it is, gentlemen, with our world, and maybe in some ways I'm a societal misfit, but what is with our world that is afraid of feeling things? It's like probably the biggest thing humans run from in their lives are feelings. And I cannot describe, it's truly indescribable, the enormity of the blessing in my life that not only do I not run from it, I'm paid to feel it. That's my living. My living is to authentically feel things. And I want to tell you, when we stifle that which is natural, we get into problems. Or when we pass the buck because we say, well, I might fall apart. Well, yeah. And what crime would be committed if you fall apart? Of course you're going to fall apart. It's your dad. It's your mom. It's your sister. It's your wife. It's whomever. It was my brother, my full blood, one and only full blood brother, Brian, when he died last year. I did the eulogy and I was honored. I was honored and I was emotional and I cried and I laughed. And we cried and we laughed together as a people. But the problem is when we hand off the buck to someone else to run the service, I guess we feel like we've gotten brownie points for running it efficiently, but we didn't run it with any heart because we were too afraid that heart might be on display. So the worst case scenario is now we give it to someone who didn't even friggin' know the deceased. And I can hear the voice of the dead going, why did you do that? Why did you have somebody step up and speak about my life that 3 days ago didn't even know I was on the planet? They've never met me. They don't know a thing about me, but it's all done in the name of dodging the display of feelings. I think a good old-fashioned snot cry is highly recommended for our world. I think that's when you begin to start getting healthy, is on the backside of a good old-fashioned snot cry, where you're just blowing things out of every orifice because you've lost it. Anyway, but that's what I teach. And so I'm more, I guess, comfortable with not running from emotion. I think that we get into trouble when we run from human emotions. They are a beautiful thing. Beautiful.
Jeez. That was an accident. Robert, you got to stop writing books, bro. I'll pop your comments up once in a while.
To piggyback on that, Glenn, too, I think sometimes,
I got a little carried away, Scott. Sorry about that.
No, it's wonderful. Because it's also a corollary to what you're saying is that we get taught these things about what emotion is appropriate and when it was, the big boys don't cry, kind of thing. And the other thing was, my wife battled cancer for years, and in all candor, a lot of my tears at the end were not for her. They were how much I was going to miss her. And I thought that sounded so selfish. And then, working with a counselor later on said, no, I mean, if that's, you were relieved that she was out of pain. You were crying for the loss of the friendship and the companionship and how that, what could be wrong with that? And I felt guilty for so long, knowing that the reason for a lot of my tears at the very end, not earlier, but the very end, was that how much I was going to miss the friendship that we had, the relationship that we had. And I felt so selfish about that. But at the end of the day, when you have a loved one who is suffering and that suffering is relieved, it's okay. It's okay to feel relieved that your loved one isn't suffering anymore. And it's okay to cry because you're going to miss that companionship, but not necessarily. I shed a lot of tears over that period of time from the beginning of her illness through it. And at the end, it was, I was cried out about the illness, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Be accepting of your emotion. I'm agreeing with you. Being accepting of your emotion and accepting of yourself is, and exactly that was exactly how I felt, Brian. Was, I was, in such a strange way, I was happy that her suffering had ended. I was happy of the years that we had spent together. I mean, we got married 10 weeks to the day after we met, so if nothing else, I'm a strong closer.
Wow.
But, I mean, it was such an experience. And I know you went through that with your brother, Glenn. I mean, it just, to have someone so close to you, it's different with a parent. It's almost like what you said about assuming you're going to make it to Palm Springs. I think there's something in us. We kind of assume that we're going to outlive our parents. That's the way the world is supposed to work. But there are other people in your life that you just think are going to be there forever because we don't think about it. And it's when something shocking happens to remind us of how short life is, we should be, I love the word that Michelle used here about grace. We should be grateful for the grace that we are given to be with the ones we love, as long as that happens. I would rather have had the 25 years that we had, even though it ended tragically, than to not have. Well, what's the alternative? You don't have it at all. So
that's Garth Brooks right there.
Yeah.
The dance.
Yeah.
The dance, man. I think, and I've always had this weird. I remember when I was 18, my cousin, he was my best friend. We grew up together, and he was killed in a car accident on his 18th birthday, and he hit the back of a stopped semi at 85 miles an hour, so there was not much left. And I'll never forget. I wouldn't even go into the, because it was horrible how it happened, but it's terrible. But I remember I wouldn't even go in because I'm like, that's not him in there. Like, I'm not going in there. That's not him. Like, what are we doing here? This is, and I can remember. I felt incredibly sad. I did not cry a lot, and for some reason, to me, for my entire life, I've always thought that grieving is a selfish act, because it's not like somebody that dies, they're not feeling pain. I'm not crying for their pain.
Tell us about what Dr. Bernie Siegel says, baby.
Right. And Ernest just popped it up here. I mean, Dr. Siegel is brilliant. And he talked about having a dream, and he went to heaven, and he was really, really sad about, it was his father, right? His father had died, and he had this dream, and he went to heaven, and he's sitting on this like bench, and there's this line of of people walking by holding these lit candles, and he's talking to the angel that brought him there, and he looked up and he said, "Hey, there's a guy down there that he doesn't have his candle's not lit." And the angel said, "Well, go down there and light it for him." So he runs down and he goes, and I realize it's my dad. And he's like, "Hey, why is your candle not lit?" And he goes, "Because your tears keep putting it out." And he said, I realized at that moment, like, wow, I'm putting my dad's candle out with my tears. Like he said, it's okay to mourn, but you got to move on. You got to let go. You got to move on from it. And so I just think, again, and this all comes back to the risk. Like what is the risk in letting go of that? Because there is, right? There's risk in letting go of that sadness. There's risk. What is the risk?
And I also think, I mean, it's funny, the funny, strange, not funny, humorous, but the doctor who ran the hospice, Sherry lasted for quite a long time in hospice.
Wow.
And I was there every night, for 2 months. And you don't spend that long in hospice. You're not supposed to be there that long. And so the doctor that ran the hospice took me for a cup of coffee, and he said, so there's something up. Tell me what's up. And I didn't know what he meant. And he said, why is she hanging on? And I'm like, well, she just has this incredible will to live. And he said, no, there's something else. He said, I see this. I see people pass every day, so what I do, I run a hospice. And he said, I think for many of us, when we get to this point, God has decided, however you believe in God, but God has decided that it's time for you to come home. But he lets you decide when that moment is. And wow. He said, well, why has she not decided that moment? And all of a sudden I realized my dad had passed away like 6 months earlier, and I was holding my dad's hand when he passed, and how much it really impacted me. I had never seen someone pass before. I'd certainly never held anyone's hand when it passed before, and it really affected me. And I told him that story, and he said, that's it. She doesn't want to put you through that again within a 6-month period, to lose your dad and lose your wife sitting there. And he said, have you told her it's okay to go? I said, yeah, I've told her it's okay. He said, yeah, you've told her that, but you're still sitting there. So Betsy, her best friend, who stayed with her, came in early, and I left. And that was the night she passed away.
Oh, wow.
I don't think that's a coincidence. It wasn't that she was waiting for someone to arrive. She was waiting on someone to leave, right? I mean, she didn't want to put me through that. And it's such an amazing experience. I don't talk about it. About this part very much, but it's kind of what we're on tonight. There was one night that, it's weird how in those last stages, and I bet a lot of people have experienced this, that sometimes they are different. They're not very clear, or they're much more abrupt and angry, or whatever. But we've been through a period. She didn't recognize some people, and all that. It's just really, really tough. She wasn't herself. And I was sitting there, and there was a bed for me in the hospice room, but I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I had my head in my hands, and I was, kind of softly crying. All of a sudden I felt her hand on the top of my head. And she said, she's comforting me. She said, everything's going to be okay. And I kind of laughed. I said, are you kidding? Nothing is going to be okay. Nothing is going to be okay. And she said, no, she said, everything's going to be all right. And she told me there was like 3 things that she wanted, and she told me that, and it was just this incredible moment of clarity. And and Anna, no, I'm not absolutely not clumsy at all. You're exactly right with that. She was waiting permission. She was waiting on something. She was And I the funny thing is, one of the things that she demanded of me was that I start trying to find somebody else in my life. And I was like, I can't talk about this. I cannot talk about this. And she said, look, if you'd have lost me in a plane crash or a car wreck, you'd better sit on your ass and cry for me for a long time, right? She said, you and I have been through this for 5 years. And she said,
wow.
She said, don't leave me thinking that my illness is ruining more years of your life, or ruining was not the word she used, but that you'll be dwelling for years later based upon the illness that happened to me. And it was really something. And when Tammy and I got married, a little over a year later, her best friend was a part of our wedding, which is really kind of cool.
That's incredible.
Thing. And there's my moment of silence.
He's muted. You're muted, Glenn.
Oh, okay. My fan is acting up again, so I didn't want it to make too much noise here. Probably best to get this radio spot in now. It says tonight's show is brought to you by Westside Memorial Park and Funeral Home. Wanted to read our radio spot there.
At 12 minutes after, it's the time that we always play every week. That game I know you've been waiting on. Ooh, that's just wrong.
Oh, my Lord.
So my just wrong is a funeral home spot. No.
right at the end of my
Glenn,
unbelievably touching story.
That Glenn did a radio spot for a funeral home.
Dude, I got, before we move on to that, Scott, thank you for sharing that, man. That's I've not been through anything like that, and I mean, I know Glenn hasn't lost the love of his life. I've not, and that takes vulnerability.
Yeah.
To share that. So thank you for that, man.
We absolutely love and support one another. And when I see my buddies get vulnerable, I just sit here and smile with a yes. I'm a fan of what's real. I'm truly a fan of what's real. Do you guys have, other than me reading a radio spot for our sponsorship, do you guys have a that's just wrong?
I want you to go first, and I'm praying to God that you share what happened today as your, ooh, that's just wrong.
Oh, really? Well, I can't do it with the voice and everything.
Oh, you have to, man.
I can't, man. Come on. You're forgetting I'm on television. I'm going to get myself busted hard.
Oh, okay. Well,
but I made the, what's wrong today, if I can put it in the fewest words ever, is that I made the first trip I've made in years to McDonald's. And, that was just wrong. My mom had a craving. And the thing is, I live in a do what mom needs world. I do. My mom's 82 and mama wanted French fries today. So what do? You go get French fries. And she didn't just want any French fries. No. Did I say any? No. They had to be McDonald's fries. Why? We all know. That's the only product they make that's worth a damn. And their fries are good. They are good as long as you eat them hot. Right. So right. I went on a fry obtaining mission and I said, hey, Mom, would you like something to go with your fries? Or is this just an exclusive fry run? And she said, I want a chicken sandwich, spicy chicken sandwich, or grilled, not spicy, grilled chicken sandwich. I said, got it. So anyway, to move the story along, we go to a nearby drive-through and we order the grilled chicken sandwich and do it as a meal deal with fries and a drink. And I was told, we ain't got no chicken sandwich. We ain't got no. All right. And then I was informed cause of COVID. We ain't got no chicken sandwich cause of COVID. All right. Well, if it's cause of COVID, I'm suddenly not interested in eating anything you have. If you have discontinued part of your food line because of COVID, what are you telling me about the food you do serve? So anyway, I just thought it was very interesting. And I said, we'll have with that 2 quarter pounders with cheese. And all I can say is that it was less than terrific. But I was informed we have no grilled chicken sandwich. I said, well, it says on your menu that you have chicken nuggets, which I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but those are made of chicken, aren't they? Right. So did you do a recall on chicken? And if you did, why didn't include the nuggets aspect of the chicken? And now I'm having a discussion with this person who's making whatever, $8 an hour, God bless her. And it was just weird. And it was one of those, why am I here moments? Why am I in line? And I made a mental note to not do this for the rest of my life, actually. It was that dramatic. I thought, let's just not ever do this again. So I got the chicken nuggets. I'm assuming my mother is still alive, although I've not spoken with her. So I hope the nuggets didn't do her in. But with improvement, that hamburger could have been lousy. It would had to have improved to suck. And so that's my, ooh, that's just wrong. I think the version I told you, Ken, today was much better.
Oh, it was way better. But yeah,
Pamela brings up a great thing, though. What part of the chicken does the nugget come from?
Yeah.
I know what a chicken breast is. I know what a chicken leg is. I know what a chicken thigh is. What's a chicken nugget?
I think all I know is I've had a few nuggets that seem to have a piece of beak in them.
Oh, God.
You know.
Oh, I'm going to throw up, and that's just wrong. I can't do
it on the radio one time, and I did not mean to say it. I have no idea where it came from, but there was a hit song called Jackie Blue. And it was by
Jackie Blue.
It's by the Ozark Mountain Daredevils was the name of the band. They also had a hit called If You Want to Get to Heaven.
Ooh, Jackie Blue, yeah.
Oh, I love the song, right? And Ozark Mountain Daredevils. And I flipped on the mic, and I don't know, and I said, Jackie Blue, the Ozark Mountain Oysters. Do you know what a mountain oyster is?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The program director did not like my testicle reference.
And especially when you put those two sentences together as one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And create a hybrid.
Yes. Which is what he thought I was doing. And I swear to you, that was not my intention.
Wow.
That is my first new radio station. I'm 16, WJCD, Seymour, Indiana.
Give us the call. Give us the drive to call.
Oh,
it's Scott McCain.
This one, I was 16. I was working at another radio station 5 days a week, and I got a job, or 6 days a week, and I got a job doing Sundays at WJCD. But the way they started everybody was you played the church programs on Sunday morning. But Seymour was a bigger town, right? I mean, and so I was on, and everything was different, just a different studio, different everything. And I had to, there was a tape that was on of one church service. And then I had to do the station ID and the time and the weather, and then go to the next church service that was on live. And I'm going from the First Baptist Church to the First Episcopal Church. And I did this and I hit it, and all of a sudden the tape is still going and it's flapping over here in my ear. And I said, I did it. It's 10 o'clock at WJCD, Seymour, Indiana. Time now for the services of the First Epileptic Church.
Oh,
and boy, those folks did not have a sense of humor about that at all.
I'm guessing not.
Oh, man.
I had no idea I'd said it. The worst part was I had no idea I'd said it. I just went to it live, and the phones exploded. Do you know what you said? Do you know what? So.
Oh, my God. Oh.
Ken, you got one, brother?
I don't. I'm blank this week.
I'll
I'm
make
sorry.
up for it because I think
Yeah.
my grandfather's last words he ever spoke could qualify as "Ooh, that's just wrong," and maybe for me more so than for him. But my grandfather's last words were, "Glenn, you're standing on my oxygen line."
Oh my God. You. Oh my God. I can't.
Might if my plug doesn't charge my phone.
Wow. Look at that. We're at the end of the hour already.
Oh, God.
Oh my God. That is so funny. Oh my gosh. Wow. People are, yeah. Well, Pam says, yep, that one wins, Glenn. Oh, I can't. I don't think I can do the rest of the show now. Oh.
Oh, Carolyn.
Wait a minute, I like Carolyn's here. Is that great? I want my last words to be, I buried the money in.
Right. She said that before on our program, which I absolutely
I love that.
I love that.
I love that.
And I even see it in a whisper. Don't you guys? Come here, man. I buried the money in.
Yeah. Oh my
Remember the
God.
old, you want to buy a watch?
Oh my God. Hey, happy Thanksgiving to everybody in Canada, eh?
Yes, it is Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
They always do it the month before we do. Happy Thanksgiving, Rainey, up there in Vancouver, BC.
Happy Thanksgiving. That's
my
awesome.
love to you and Lena, and to Donnie B. Fraser, and all of my pals up in the greater Vancouver area. And to all of your friends over in Ontario, in Forest, Ontario, and Sarnia, Ontario. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our Canadian audience.
Yeah. Michelle said, I got into my mom's Chanel 5. Her last words were, Michelle, you're wearing my perfume again. That's funny. Charles says, well done, General Morshower.
Thank you, Charles. Eddie's soldier. Eddie's.
Yeah. Wow.
Hey, we start back on The Resident tomorrow. That's exciting. I wished Matt Zuckery a fantastic 4th season today, and he responded promptly and thanked me. I said, I will see you, my brother, in 2 weeks, because that's when I'll be joining them. We're block shooting this year, which means you're shooting 2 episodes at a time, not necessarily in sequence. So it could be that the first 4 scenes of the year are from the 2nd episode, but they're shooting them in blocks because that is a more efficient way to shoot. We shot in blocks for 24 all those years. I'm amazed that more episodic television shows have not resorted to that, because it's pretty seamless. So we're excited, because we all, like all the other shows, have been shut down since early April is when early March. Early March is when we stopped.
Yeah.
And so we're back, and certainly it's going to be a very different version of being back. I think
Were you on set when they pulled the plug?
I was not. It was in the episode that followed the one that I had done, and they were only, I had left Atlanta like 4 days prior to the sudden wrap, and my hat's off to Fox Television for valuing their employees, because they did pull the plug in the middle of the episode, middle of the day. It was like, we're done here. We're going home. And nobody knew that it would be all of these months later before we went back to work. So I salute their courage. And, going back to where we opened this discussion tonight of risk versus reward. And I love the circuitous path that it took. I personally am a fan of exploring the available conversational tributaries, because one leads us to the next. And we have these pop-up conversational windows that show up. And the reality is, had we not done this thing and talked about this thing, something took us to what we wound up talking about. And Scott, I've never seen you be more tender, nor more vulnerable, nor more beautiful. And you're a pleasure on this show every week. But tonight, you're a different kind of pleasure.
Yeah,
And it's really true. You're an incredible presence on the air, whether it be on camera, whether it be on radio. You do have the gift of presence. God bless you. It is that. It is a gift. And you've also rehearsed your gift. If I were God, and I'm not, but if I were, I would say, my son, you've done a lot with what I gave you. And that's beautiful. But tonight you went a different path. And it's because we were willing to explore whatever was showing up next. And that's the beauty of spontaneity.
Our conversation took us there. So,
yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah, it was great. I got to point out, look, Glenn, would you read that?
Yes, I want to die in my sleep like Grandpa, not screaming like the other passengers in his car. Yes, that is a wonderful old joke, Carolyn, and I love it.
I've never heard it.
You've never heard that? Wanting to die in your sleep like my grandfather funny. And not like the passengers in his car. Yes.
That's so funny.
Guys, and in advance, because you know I've got to scoot here at the end, but thank you. You both, Ken and Glenn, are volunteering their time to help me this weekend with the big program that I'm doing, which is a very exciting yet stressful, because we're doing it for the first time, and you guys jump in from the word go, and
we'll give it the big plug, brother, because this is your last opportunity.
Yeah, this is the last time. We're about a program called the Distinction Summit. Stand out, earn more. The Distinction Summit coming up this weekend. You can check it out at distinctionsummit.go. Kids got it right there. That's so cool. And we got some great guests. These two friends are certainly joining, and Sage Steele from ESPN, Larry Wingate, Joe Calloway, some real Mark Sanborn, some really terrific folks. By the way, if you haven't read Mark's book, The Fred Factor, it's one of the great books about service of all time. So what it's about is how to take what you do and make it stand out in the marketplace so that you attract more customers, you attract more business. And it's funny, and you guys know this, when I talk about earning more, I think people immediately go to monetary, and that's not, that could be part of it, but you earn more respect, and you earn more satisfaction, and you earn more reward. You earn more of what you want. Maybe you earn more freedom if that's what you desire. But it's finding a way to take what you do and make it special, and make it stand out, and make it distinctive. And that's what my work is all about. So check out distinctionsummit.com. By the way, I add the code DISTINCT2020 if you sign up. It saves you $100. So it means it's under $100 for the $100 for 2.5 day program. We've had several folks sign up, and really excited. And that's what I'm scooting for, is a dinner with somebody that's being a part of that. And really excited.
And our commitment is to help you ensure that this coming weekend rocks, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I know you've got a place to be, so let's go off on time. I do want you to note Reenie's comment about you, Scott. She said, Scott, you're looking very young this evening.
It's the lights in the hotel room, Reenie.
It's like that's what they used to say on Delta Airlines. You remember that? The pilot would always say, we keep our lights low in the cabin to enhance the appearance of the flight attendants.
I've not heard that. Oh, that's good.
Because Delta won't even hire you. They won't even start hiring you until you're 60.
Yeah.
That's when you're eligible to become hired as a flight attendant. So they have to keep the lighting down. Hey, we love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Love you guys. Thank you all.
Hey, Scott, have a killer dinner tonight. Enjoy. I'm sure that it will go well. I'm knowing that in advance for you. And take us out with your fantastic methodologies.
Hey guys, thanks. Holy cow, how much participation have we had tonight too? It's just been super to hear from everybody. We love you guys, and thank you for being a part of the Ken and Glenn show with a guy named Scott. See you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.